G'day everyone, it's Mike from Battlefield Accessories here, and today I'm going to do a construction video for our 20mm church. This is the 20mm church building. And it's a building we're pretty proud of. We have full printed interior and stained glass windows printed on clear perspex, which means if you light up the inside of the church, you'll see that coming through the outside. It also has a baby brother, which is our 10mm version. Now it's a little less complicated in terms of like the stained glass windows are printed, because I don't know that anybody wants to try and maneuver 10mm perspex sheets into a building. Also, the roof doesn't come off because this is more meant as a piece that you put on the table and fight around rather than fight within. If you're wanting to fight inside the church, then really you need an upgrade to the 20mm version, or maybe the 28mm version, if we can get enough likes and a bit of encouragement from you guys to actually do the artwork. You might also find this video attached to some of our other models, as the construction techniques are very similar. Again, we always recommend use super glue. Make sure that you're working on a clear space, which doesn't matter if it gets glue on it or if you cut it with a knife. Making sure that you dry fit all parts before they go in. Generally speaking, they won't need any adjustment, but the odd shave here or there with a knife doesn't hurt. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy this video. Okay, just going to start by giving you a side-by-side comparison. This is our 20mm church, and this is our 10mm version of it. Removable roof, right, and difficult to see there, but you can see there's a stained glass windows inside there, which makes it really good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a construction video of this one. It'll be relevant to lots of the construction videos that we make, because these all basically run on the same design. So you may actually find this video linked into lots of other products that are built in a similar way. So here we have a brand new in shrink wrap. What I'm going to do is instead of take my knife, break the shrink wrap. Let's have a look at the components. So you get a sheet of perspex printed windows. Now, one of the things to watch out for all the perspex is printing on one side, and there's normally a plastic cover on the other. And so it's really important that you peel that off, right? And that's the surrounds coming off there, also off the individual window frames, right? And that'll give you a really nice bright effect. I would always have the non-printed side facing out, because it gives you that reflective glass kind of look. Okay, so we'll put that aside for later. And then we have 4 main sheets. And you see one of them is the baseboard, and we're going to work off that one. Then I've got 2 sheets, so sheets with external walls and walls for the church. And you can see I've got little cutouts here for the windows to sit in. And then I also have a 1.8mm sheet which has frames and roofing sections in it. Let's start with a few basic principles. Number one, model knife is always good. I'm using a mount cutter here, which gives me a nice solid razor blade type structure right in a really good clamp. We also use Zap-A-Gap super glue. Right, in this case, I'm using the Slow Zap because it's all that my local supplier had. I would definitely, the only one I would not recommend is the thin, right, because the thin will run into all the crevices and you'll end up with glue all over your fingers and everywhere. What we need is we need a little bit of bulk from the glue to catch all of the joints. So that's the way I would go with that. You can also use Mercap, which is a super glue accelerator. Yeah, you want to watch the safety precautions on that one. It always talks about well ventilated space and that sort of stuff. It is good when you want something to cure really, really quickly. So I'll often use it when I'm sticking models together. For these, they tend to hold themselves in place, so it's not so necessary, but it might be something that you want to consider. Okay, the last thing that I always recommend when using super glue is a pair of chemical resistant gloves. It just stops you sticking your fingers together. So put a pair of gloves on. Quick note on de-spruing. So these items here have got tiny little tags which are holding the model piece into the sprue. Now you can just wind them out, but it will leave a little bit of excess on the edges. So I always advise with these ones with my model knife, just, and if you listen carefully, you'll hear that going through, which then will allow these pieces to simply drop out of the sprue. There they are, they're like that. Okay, well I'll be back in a moment after I de-sprue all of my window frames. The other thing I want to do is I want to clean off all of the cover protective sheet from the stained glass windows. Fingernails normally the best, right, in from the spiky side. Right, you could use a model knife. The Perspex is pretty resistant to scratching, but I wouldn't like cut with the blade directly down. So with the Perspex, from the printed side, using my model knife very carefully just to break the joint. So when I'm working on this part here, I always like to get a piece of laminated paper, like if you've got a quick reference sheet that's laminated or just a laminating pouch. So the principle is that I have these two frames, and I might get I might get a window frame for you to look at too. So I have this gap. This window frame is going to sit inside it, and then a second one's going to sit on side that. So the actual frame is proud of the main surface. And so there's a few tricks to making this work. Number one is we're going to stick these together before sticking them into the main terch body. The other one is these are double-sided printed, right? And so you can actually look at them and say, oh, that's the side I like best. So here's the principle. I've taken one frame. I'm going to take the side of the stained glass that I want sticking up, and I'm going to put it into the frame and push it all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so I'll get the top surface, so top surface like that, then a slight recess to the glass, and then once that's dried, pick the whole thing up and stick it to a frame. So on the reverse side, right, I get quite a deep, sort of 1.8 mil recess down to the window. So I have 13 frames, and hopefully you can see I've got 13 set up there on my screen. So I'm taking my super glue. I'm going to make a little puddle of super glue on my plastic material, right? Not on my mat. Like, so I put on my mat, it'll be an X mat. Okay, I'm going to take the window frame and I'm going to pinch it on the spike. What I'm going to do is basically just put it into the super glue, so get a little bit of super glue on each of the sides, and then I'm just going to drop it in the frame. Now, I'm being careful, it's probably really hard for you to see if I try and catch the light with it. Right, on the back side, and it catches the light too. No, not to worry. One side, when you're holding this in your hand, one side is really shiny. That's the side I want to have facing up, which is going to be the outside of the building. So, tiny bit of super glue there, tiny bit of super glue there. Take the window frame, the glass, and it'll just drop down nicely in there. Okay, so one done, 12 to go. Okay, one set of windows complete. Now, hot tip here, don't use Mercap when you're working with the Perspex windows. Reason being that Mercap, when it goes off, if you've got any pools of glue, the glue will go yellow, right, and it will really wreck the effect that you're going for on your windows. Final thing I would do here is they're flat down on the surface, so I would just make sure that I give them a little twist to make sure any super glue that's connected to the bottom is not actually glued like these ones have. Right, and this is where working on a sheet is great because I can just peel the whole thing off. Now, in the ideal world, I would now wait for those to dry, but this is television, not the ideal world. And so I'm going to quickly grab a second sheet.
Making myself another little pool of super glue. So I've got my window frames that are all set up here. What I'm now going to do is flip them all over. So of course they're dry, because I gave them time to dry. Right, so there you go, you can see they're all flush with the back. Now I've got these window frames, and what I'm basically going to do is line these over the top of them. Now again, the trick here is if I just carefully dab that in, I get a little bit of glue on the back side of it, and then I can just come along. This is where my gloves are really useful. I just put it in, check that it's lined up pretty well, and then leave it. Again, watch me do this in fast forward.
Yeah, so you can see at this point I decided that the gloves and holding the window frames with my fingers was a little bit tricky, so I went and grabbed a pair of tweezers. Gave me quite a lot more control, so that's probably a thing to recommend.
Okay, so I've got my windows complete. I'm going to push them aside to dry. Now we might build the external walls. So the external walls are these long thin ones. Again, same process as before. I can come along with my knife and just take out the little joins there.
Now, this part of the process isn't really essential, right? You're just going to get a cleaner D-sprue. You can see in a moment I'm going to break that sprue because it's not needed, and just to help me get the pieces out. The more prep work you do in terms of the removing pieces, the cleaner it's going to be. Of course, the other thing you can do is you always come along and give them a bit of a trim up after you've de-sprued them. Okay, so once I've got all my walls, a couple of notes here that there are plants on the outside and on the inside. So these walls can go either side, and these long ones actually fit in both sides. Then I have these smaller sections, right? And it's always important to make sure that they're fitting in the right spot. And it's a little bit off camera at the moment, but I'm basically lying each of those against the spots where they fit. So as I make sure they've got all the parts in the right place before I start putting glue on things. You can see there I've got a small bit of laser cutting that hasn't popped out properly, and just a little tap and out it comes. Always important to do that before you start putting glue on things. So we're going to use this system a lot for the rest of the construction. So what I'm basically doing, I've made a little pool of glue, right, and I'm swiping the spike into the glue, and then the end tags, I'm going to do the same. Making sure I've got glue on the right face so you can see it along there, and then going to drop that into where it goes on the thing. Now, one of the tips is if you're using fast acting super glue, you've got to work very carefully or quickly in this space, because that will actually glue itself in. Right, if you're using fast acting, then I would kind of build this all at once, but because I'm using slow, I can now add to the bottom spikes, and I've already got glue on the end, so that last little swipe of glue is probably optional. A bit hard to see there because I'm blocking it with the glove, but I'm picking it up, slotting the side joints in, and then locking everything down into the base. And so that corner join there, perfect.
Now that my external wall's in place, I'm just going to make sure that all these corners are nice and firm, right? And then I'm going to leave that aside to dry. One thing to watch on this is that there will be a little bit of glue leakage through these holes here, so you might want to give it a wipe over. Just make sure you don't put it on the dining room table. because that will end in tears. Okay, I'm just going to now punch out all the rest of the main building. All right, so here is the main body of the church, and as you can see, the most convoluted part of this whole construction is the windows. The rest of it's really straightforward. So I've got 4 pieces which make up the main tower, right, plus a roof section. Then I've got 4 pieces that make up the main body of the church, right, and then 3 pieces which make up the kind of sanctum at the end. Let's install the windows next. So I'm going to build the central section here. Right, and to do that, I've got these 4 pieces here. You see that these 3 need windows. This one does not. So I'm going to put that away. So I've picked up my window. I've decided which way I want to have facing up. That way. Tiny bit of glue, not too much on the edges. It might not hurt to give it a wipe over at the back because you don't want the glue on the back surface. So push that down so that's snuggish. And so they're kind of flush at the back, right, but raised up at the front. Okay, I'm just actually going to stand that up somewhere. So what I want is I want a bit of air circulation around those windows, because otherwise, you know what super glue does? It will go a bit white and pasty. When I'm lifting that up, I'm leaving a little bit of super glue behind, which is okay. That's why I don't want to leave it sitting there, because it will stick that to the thing and you might peel some of your texture off, which is easy to repair with a paintbrush, but you know, the whole idea is you don't want to have to repair it, so don't stick it to your mat. Now, if you're constructing at home, as you will be, you can afford to leave that. You don't need to use the Mercap. You can just leave it sit. I'm trying to do this in one sitting, right? So I'm doing that straight away so as it cures. Okay, so I've got my window frames, or walls with window frames. Now, in terms of the alignment with the church, I have a round door and a square door. If I put them like that towards you, round door and a square door. The square opening is at the sanctum, so that's at this end up here. Right, the round door matches up with the tower, right, so it goes up the other end. The other thing to watch out for is that there is plants on one side of this. Make sure that's the outside, not the inside, unless you're making some sort of ruin that's had plants growing inside it. They need to be on the outside. Same with these long walls. Okay, process we're going to use is exactly the same. So I'm going to come along with my super glue, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue on those 2 and on the end spikes. On both ends, oops. Just going to rest that in place. Now there is a trick with getting this in place, so I've got to put that in, drop it down, and then this end piece, right, will just, if I've got it right, should just slide in place like that, because the spikes are on the outside pieces, right, so on these pieces here, these 2 end pieces should just slide in. So you saw me put this end piece in. I actually didn't need to do it like that. I could have just put the 2 walls in, stood them up, slid the ends in. Okay, so I'm going to take the piece with the rounded door. I'm going to put glue on all of the bits and pieces. I'm going to put the deck piece in, making sure I check it only goes in one way, so that's the way it goes. I'm then going to roll around, so I'm going to take the next piece, and I can tell that it goes because of these lines here, right? And I'm going to glue it check that it's going together okay. Just watch these bits, these bits here, right, because they will have wet glue on them, so you just want to avoid getting glue on your fingers. And then finally, this last bit, you probably don't actually need to glue it because you've got glue on the other sides. There you go, it locks together nicely. Again, glue on the feet. Get the whole thing and drop it down into the church. Now that will have an effect of pushing this front lead wall here back into holding it into place. So that also is good. Just make sure you get these nice and tight. Great, there we have that. And then finally the sanctum. So again, I've got windows to worry about. Again, some sides of the sanctum have plants on them, so it's going to go together like that. Now the technique I'm using here with swiping through the glue is less precise than if you put glue directly on the parts, right? And so I'm just showing you this way because it's, if you like, it's the cheating way. You can do it really, really quickly. But if you like things to be just a little bit more precise, because I will have some excess glue on this, right? And so you might not want to do that. You might want to have yours really, really good. So if you want to do it like that, then you would just put glue directly on the parts. I've got a hole at this end against the body of the church, which this is going to go down into. And then we've got a hole, a pair of holes at the other end, which is just going to lock down into. Critical thing here is making sure that, again, the plants are on the outside. Now, as this wall has gone in first, it will have a little bit of you might have to push back on it a fraction. So you see what I'm doing there is doing a dry fit first, just to make sure I've got it all around the right way. Then I'm going to deconstruct it, and then I'm going to glue up my parts. I'm not pushing that one all the way home. This one is a little bit, can be a little bit fiddly. So I'm just sitting that spike in the hole. I'll push it down at the end once I get the other end in. So I've got my plant on the outside, top tip that. And because I said it was going to be fiddly, it went in perfectly. Okay, so do whatever I just did, which is basically have it sort of resting in place, push the last plate into its hole slightly, and then adjust the pieces so they fit. The final thing to do is make sure that the walls are square. Okay, let's quickly talk about roofs. So, simplest roof is the roof for the sanctum. It basically has two pieces that lock together inside here. Right, and it just basically sits across the top of that and actually sits the other way around. Okay, so let's quickly build that. Again, I'm taking these two pieces, checking they're lining up. I'm going to flip them over, just so as I'm clear about what side the glue's going to go on. Then taking my roof piece, right, run a small bead of glue down those two faces. And then So I've got there like that. And then just for final, I'm just going to run a tiny little bit of glue down the center of that. And then I'm going to sit that away somewhere. So I put a little bit of glue down in here. Check that this is lined up nicely on the face here, which it is. And then I'm just going to leave that aside to dry. Maybe stand it up on the end like that. Okay, the main roof, a few more moving parts to this one. In essence, I've got these two brackets. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to have slate running up to stone and then slate across the top. Now, in terms of putting these together, the stone goes in first, right? Then the base slate, that should hold the whole thing square, and then finally the top roof goes on. So, to do this, I'm basically going to glue the flat surfaces of the bracket. Probably shouldn't stand it up against my completed model, but you'll have something else at your place to stand it up against. Okay, so got my stonework first. So clip that in on that one, and then do the same on the other.
Yeah, so working on a flat surface here is really useful. As you can see, when you drop that lower slate in, it actually locks the stonework in place. That's the same principle here as the other roofs. There's no locking spikes on this one, so I'm going to put glue across those top parts of the supports. And then I'm going to put some glue in a moment down the center of the roof itself. And so when those bits fold in, they're going to be, the two faces will be glued together. And so once you've got those in place, you need to be careful because they may slide apart. And as you see here with my thumb, I'm just lining that up so as it's perfectly square where I'm pointing to right now. And so it's an easy thing to do because there's no alignment pegs on that. So just keep a lookout for that. And then you might put some masking tape across the top, or if you had Mercap, now would be the time to use Mercap because you really want that one to go off straight away. Now as you can see, the roof, once I've allowed it to dry, fits in perfectly. Right, this piece I've got in my hand here is the gate, and it basically is going to slot down in front of the church, or the main entrance, or the steeple. What I'm going to do here, dry fit of course, then I'm going to put glue down both sides of it so as it also attaches, it sticks itself to the walls, right, that way it's going to have complete alignment with the walls. So the graveyard consists of the grave surrounds, which basically you can see they surround the printed area, and then it has gravestones which have a spike which basically goes in the hole. I'm going to break them all out for you now. So the headstones are only attached with a single tab, and given on the 1.8 material, they come out pretty quickly or easily. So I'm just finger pulling those out. Again, if they were tight at all, then you could use your knife like we would with the other pieces. We also have a few gate pieces there, which I'm going to put aside for the last step. Now the surrounds are a little bit more fragile because they're thin, and so basically what I'm going to do is cut the two ends out on each of them so they're linked across, as you'll see in a moment. Once they're cut from the sprue, I can then fold them apart. But again, if at any point in time they're a bit tight, then use a knife rather than breaking them manually. So I'm going to use a technique that you've seen a few times in this video already. So basically you're going to make a puddle of glue, going to pick up a headstone, get its foot wet with some glue, and then just stand it up in the thing. Now it's a little bit tricky to do because of the way my camera is positioned, but I think I'll probably get it right by the last one. Okay, here they go, fast forward. Right, no prizes for working out how we're going to do the surrounds. Basically pick them up, drop them in the glue so they get a bit on that bottom face, and then carefully place them around the headstone. Now you can actually use this, basically pulling it forward to straighten the headstone up, but sometimes most old graveyards tend to have a little bit of non-precision to them, so it doesn't matter if they're a little bit rough, a little bit out of alignment. They'll have a good effect, and basically again we're going to run through a set of these. Okay, the final thing is the gates. Now with the gates, when I'm putting them in the glue, I'm going to basically wet the bottom edge and then one of the side edges. For the back gate, I'm going to have that as closed. And then for the front gates, I'm basically going to make them open. Right, and so again, the bottom and one side, the side that's going to be in contact with the wall or with the gate piece, right, is the critical bit here. Right, there we have the completed church. I hope this video has really helped you out with our really fantastic kit. See ya.